When a worn-down, grease-stained mechanic named Elijah stepped onto the private airstrip that blistering Georgia afternoon, he thought he was just fixing another broken jet engine. But when the cabin door opened and a man in a silk suit with the weight of the world in his eyes stepped out, Elijah's life and the billionaire's changed forever. Because sometimes the man with the dirtiest hands holds the cleanest truth. Elijah Turner didn't have much to his name. A rusty red toolbox, a pickup truck that coughed to life more often than not, and the kind of hands that spoke of years soaked in oil, heat, and heartbreak. For 20 years, Elijah had been a mechanic in a small town in rural Georgia, fixing everything from lawnmowers to tractor engines. Airplanes, though rare, weren't new to him. In his youth, he'd worked on crop dusters, and even spent time with an old Air Force vet who taught him how to rebuild a turbine with nothing more than intuition and a torque wrench. But that was a long time ago, and no one seemed to remember or care about Elijah's past skills. To most, he was just the black guy in grease-streaked overalls working in a sun-bleached shack off the interstate. So when a call came through on a sweltering Thursday morning asking for emergency engine repair at a nearby private airstrip, Elijah assumed it was another spoiled executive who'd neglected his toy until the last minute. The man on the phone had sounded desperate but curt. "Jet won't start. Engine's acting up. We need someone who knows what they're doing. Now." Elijah didn't hesitate. A job was a job, and bills were bills. He tossed his tools in the back of his truck and hit the road, his radio spitting static gospel as he drove. The airstrip wasn't far, just past the county line, but it was a different world. White fences, sleek hangars, and polished jets lined the runway like something out of a magazine. Elijah pulled up beside a gleaming white Gulfstream with matte black accents, its nose lifted just slightly in an arrogant tilt. It was beautiful, no doubt, but Elijah's eyes were trained to see beyond the polish. He caught the signs immediately, a faint shimmer of leaked fuel beneath the wing, a low hiss from the cooling system, and the telltale drop in the rear engine's pitch. Something was wrong. Something deep. A young man in a suit barely older than 25 jogged over. "You the mechanic?" Elijah nodded. "I'm the one they called." The man didn't hide his surprise. He looked Elijah up and down, the frayed overalls, the gray in his beard, the skin stained by sun and years of labor. "You sure you can handle this?" Elijah didn't flinch. "Won't know till I see it." The man hesitated, then motioned for him to follow. As Elijah stepped under the wing, he noticed a figure watching from the cabin window. A man, older, sharp-featured, with eyes that had seen more than most. Their gazes met for a second. The man nodded. "Elijah, right?" The young handler asked. "The engine's been glitching, won't start properly. Throws errors we can't trace. The last crew gave up, said it was a software issue. We need this jet airborne in 3 hours. Mr. Colton doesn't like delays." Elijah's ears perked up. "Colton? You mean Silas Colton?" The handler looked impatient. "Yes, the Silas Colton." Elijah whistled under his breath. Everyone in the South, hell, everyone in America, knew the name. Billionaire energy mogul. One of the richest men in the country. Known for his philanthropy, but also his ruthlessness in business, and apparently for having an engine that wouldn't start. "Let me take a look," Elijah said, already slipping his gloves on. He climbed into the service hatch like it was second nature. Within minutes, he was crawling inside spaces most men feared, tracing wires, testing circuits, tapping gently against the turbines to listen to their echo. The problem wasn't software, it was vibration. One of the intake mounts had loosened, subtly shifting the alignment and sending just enough of a ripple through the core to confuse the diagnostics. The onboard computers weren't smart enough to catch a mechanical issue that masked itself as a digital anomaly. It was a fix no textbook would teach. Elijah adjusted the mounts, secured the intake valve, and used an old trick he'd learned from the Air Force vet. He wrapped the stabilizer in a tensioned graphite thread to absorb the oscillation. Primitive, maybe, but effective. When he emerged 2 hours later, sweat dripping and hands black with grease, the handler looked doubtful. "It? Try it now," Elijah said. The man climbed into the cockpit, tapped a few controls, and the jet roared to life, smooth, balanced, like a lion stretching after a nap. The handler's eyes went wide. You fixed it. No codes, no stutter. It's perfect. Elijah wiped his brow. Told you, weren't the software. From the cabin, the door swung open, and Silas Colton stepped out. The billionaire wasn't what Elijah expected. No sunglasses, no entourage, just a tall man with silvering hair, dressed sharp but not loud. His presence was quiet but powerful. You the one who fixed my jet? Colton asked. Elijah nodded. Yes, sir, I did. Colton studied him for a long time. What's your name? Elijah Turner. Where'd you learn to do that? Elijah shrugged. Here and there. Old mentor. Life. Colton tilted his head. You have a company? No, sir. Just me. Small shop down by Highway 9. I fix what I can. Silas looked at the jet, then at Elijah. Something shifted in his eyes. You ever think about doing more than that? Elijah raised an eyebrow. You offering me a job? Silas didn't smile, but his tone softened. I'm offering you a seat at the table. And just like that, Elijah's world cracked open. For a moment, Elijah thought Silas Colton was joking. A billionaire offering him, an aging, poor black mechanic with dirt under his nails, a seat at the table? It sounded like the kind of line rich men threw around to sound generous before vanishing into their penthouses. But Silas Colton didn't vanish. Instead, the next morning, a sleek black SUV pulled into Elijah's cracked driveway. A sharply dressed woman stepped out holding a leather folder. Inside, a plane ticket, a hotel reservation, and a formal invitation to visit Colton Aerospace, one of Silas's newest ventures in Atlanta. Elijah sat in his kitchen for over an hour, staring at the letter. He'd grown up in a world where dreams stayed dreams, where men like him didn't get plucked out of obscurity by billionaires. But something about Colton's eyes told him the offer was real. He packed his only good shirt and jeans, kissed the family photo on his fridge, and left. The Colton Aerospace headquarters was a steel and glass monolith that seemed to hum with importance. Inside, men and women moved like clockwork, flashing badges, barking into headsets, typing furiously into tablets. Elijah walked through it all, feeling like an old cassette in a digital world. A receptionist brought him up to the top floor. Colton was waiting in a sunlit office overlooking the skyline. You came, Silas said simply. You really meant all that? I don't waste time on flattery, Colton replied. What you did yesterday wasn't luck. You saw a problem. 3 teams of engineers missed. That's rare. I want people like you near me. Elijah crossed his arms. So what do you want from me? A job turning wrenches for rich folks? Silas shook his head. I want you to help me build engines. Better engines. Ones that don't just serve the rich but change how we fly, how we live. You have something most of my team lost. Instinct. Elijah looked down at his hands. I never went to no fancy school. Ain't got a degree. I'm just a man who listens to machines. And that, Colton said, is exactly why I need you. Within a month, Elijah was living in a modest apartment in Atlanta and working as a consultant on Colton's newest jet prototype, a hybrid aircraft designed to cut emissions by half. His title was unofficial. His clothes still smelled faintly of motor oil, but he quickly earned respect. Young engineers, skeptical at first, began turning to him for guidance. He could hear what engines were trying to say when computers couldn't. He diagnosed issues by feel, by rhythm, by subtle vibrations no AI could interpret, but not everyone liked it. A senior engineer named Grant Wexler, Harvard-educated and clean-cut, took every opportunity to undermine Elijah. He's not one of us, Grant whispered in meetings. He's guessing. We're designing next-gen propulsion systems and we're taking advice from a man who learned from a cornfield mechanic? Elijah didn't fight back. He let his work speak. One night, during a crucial test, the prototype began to stall mid-air. During simulation, panic spread. Engineers scrambled. Computers showed no errors. Elijah stepped forward. It's not your software, it's the blade harmonics. That new titanium alloy, it's resonating at a frequency your model doesn't register. It's throwing the intake rhythm off. Grant scoffed. That's impossible. Silas, who had quietly entered the room, said, "Check it." They did. Elijah was right. Grant never doubted him again. As weeks passed, Elijah found himself spending more time with Silas Colton, not just in boardrooms, but over lunch, late-night brainstorming sessions, and quiet walks through the hangars. They were two men from opposite worlds, yet they shared something rare: silence without tension, conversation without posturing. One evening over coffee, Silas finally asked, "Why did you never go further?" "With your talent?" Elijah paused. Truth is, no one ever asked. Growing up poor, black, and rural, doors don't just open, and when they do, folks look right through you. Silas nodded slowly. "I had a father who beat me and told me I'd never amount to anything. Money didn't erase that, but you took what life handed you and made it art." Elijah chuckled. "Art? You're giving me too much credit." Silas leaned forward. "You ever think about starting your own team, your own facility?" Elijah blinked. "Me?" "You." And that's how the idea for the Turner Lab was born. Colton invested $10 million to start the lab under Elijah's name, a skunkworks division focused on unconventional aviation solutions. Elijah handpicked his team, a mix of college dropouts, war veterans, self-taught tinkerers, and yes, a few engineers who believed in learning from both books and life. They worked in a renovated warehouse with stripped-down prototypes and ideas, deemed too risky by traditional firms. In less than a year, Turner Lab unveiled its first breakthrough, a modular jet engine system designed for both private and commercial aircraft. Lighter, more adaptable, and easier to maintain. Airlines took notice. So did NASA. Elijah's face began appearing in magazines. The grease-stained genius, they called him. He hated the title. He preferred mechanic. But perhaps the most powerful moment came during the lab's first press tour. A young black student approached him, eyes wide. "Sir, I read about you. I didn't know someone like me could build things like that." Elijah knelt, handing the boy a small metal gear. "You can build anything," he said. "You just need someone to believe it." Silas Colton's health declined not long after Turner Lab's launch. He kept it quiet, but Elijah noticed the fatigue in his steps, the pauses in his speech. One morning, Silas called Elijah to the hangar where the jet he once repaired sat gleaming. "I want one last flight," he said. Elijah flew with him. Just the two of them, with Elijah in the co-pilot seat. They soared over the Georgia landscape, past cotton fields and winding rivers, past Elijah's old shop, now boarded up but still standing. As the sun dipped below the clouds, Silas looked over and said, "You fixed more than that engine, Elijah. You fixed a piece of me." Elijah didn't speak. He just flew. 2 weeks later, Silas passed away in his sleep. In his will, he left Elijah a 30% stake in Colton Aerospace and full ownership of Turner Lab. More importantly, he left a handwritten note. "The world tried to clip your wings. I hope I helped you fly." Years later, Elijah stood on stage at the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum. Behind him, the first Turner modular engine hung as a permanent exhibit. "I wasn't supposed to be here," he told the crowd. "But machines don't care about color or money or where you came from. They just need someone to listen, and sometimes people do too." The audience rose in applause, but Elijah didn't hear it. His eyes had found a young girl in the front row, black, bright-eyed, holding a notebook full of sketches. She looked at him the way he once looked at the world, full of wonder and maybe, finally, possibility. He smiled, because he knew she would fly too.